We're on to week 11. Let's talk about the waiver wire. There's a pretty underwhelming list of dudes, but I'll tell you what, there's some hidden gems. One or two dudes that I think I'll be spending up. The fab will be coming out of the wallet for this week. So let's jump into the trending players, guys we can add, guys we can drop. Let's start off very top of the list here, Mr. Audric Estime, day 3 rookie for the Denver Broncos out of nowhere. Well, I won't say out of nowhere because Sean Payton was yapping about how he's going to get more involved, but he's also done that like 4 times already this year. He did that every single week last year for Marvin Mims. So to say he's hard to trust would be an understatement. But finally, his words led to actual actions here. And Audric Estime, 14 carries to Javonte Williams' 1. He did get out snapped in terms of routes run. So Javonte had a little bit of an uptick in routes run compared to Audric Estime, but I don't think that's Audric Estime's strong point. He is not necessarily a pass catcher. He's a thumper. He's a big-bodied dude that ground and pounds. And I think in this Denver offense, like, they do want to have the game dictated through their running back group. I just don't think they've had anyone that's like been able to step up and be that dude. But Sean Payton clearly likes this dude. I think the other thing with Javonte is his contract's up at the end of this year. I would be shocked if they decided to invest in bringing him back based on what we've seen this year. He's just not been the same player since that knee injury. And even that, I don't know how great he was prior. He had like one really big game that just made everybody assume he was kind of the GOAT going forward. But he's been really underwhelming post-injury. So I'd imagine they start to lean into their youth a little bit, and Estime seems to be that dude. So he was getting a lot of work, and this has obviously been an offense that's functioned a lot more smoothly than we probably would have expected earlier on in the season. Bo Nix has steadily improved week in and week out, and their schedule going forward is like not a tough stretch of games. You got Atlanta, Vegas, Cleveland. You have a bye, but then you have Indianapolis. The Chargers are tough, but in the championship, you got Cincinnati. So I think with Estime, he's a dude that right now is going to be tough to get into your lineup. Like, I think you could start him this week. In week 11, we have the Cardinals on bye, the Panthers on bye, the Giants on bye, and the Bucks on bye. So you're talking about James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, Tyrone Tracy, Rashad White, Bucky Irving. So people will have players on bye this week where you need to throw running backs in there, and I think you could do worse than Estime. I think he's pretty much locked into a floor of 10 to 12 touches going forward. Would it surprise me if they still split the carries back there? Not really, but I think if you want to bet on upside dudes that could have a lot of touchdown equity, goal line equity going forward, and again, an offense that I think will basically be in the game script for any of these games going forward. Like, I don't think they're going to get the shit beat out of them by any of the teams that are on their remaining schedule. So Estime is a dude who is a risky flex play right now based on like the uncertainty, the opportunity going forward, but I think he could develop into a dude that's, you know, a top 25 option weekly going forward. So if you're a desperate running back, you need to make some sort of upside play at on the waiver wire this week. I think spending up for Estime could be something worth gambling on. Like, I think if you're going to throw, 10, 20%, upwards of that, 30%, if you really, really need a running back, I'm not going to argue with it, all right? He's the one running back on this list that has actual upside outside of needing an injury to happen ahead of him, all right? So Estime, he's my number one running back pickup on the week for sure. You have Gus Edwards, who came back, looked pretty good, 10 carries compared to J.K. Dobbins' 15. I still think we're just going to see Gus Edwards eventually come back to being the dude he was in the beginning of the year. That was the player that I expected to see Gus Edwards but admittedly, again, he did look better. I think it's just more of a hurt to J.K. Dobbins' value, where Dobbins probably won't get 25 plus touches going forward. J.K. Dobbins is definitely still the guy you want to own in that backfield, but you could do worse than Gus Edwards just because this Chargers offense is functioning at such a high level that if Gus ends up getting a goal line carry or two, he can give you, 10 to 12 fantasy points on a lucky week. So you could spend on him. I'm not going over the moon here, maybe 5% of your fab or something like that. He's only 19% owned right now. So Benson, Akers, Corum, those are all handcuff guys that you want to have on your bench if you have the room for them. I would rank them. Honestly, I might rank them Benson, then Corum, just the way that Benson's been playing. But they do have the bye this week, so there will be no chance of injury for James Conner this week. And obviously, it's weird because there's been like no running back injuries this year. All the guys that we want to stash for high upside, like none of them are getting hurt. Like none of the running backs are getting hurt, basically. Or if they do get hurt, it wasn't like guys with high-end handcuffs that we knew about coming into the season. So it's been a little bit tricky to decipher. Outside of that, I mean, you have Jaylen Warren, who's over 53% owned. Like, he's the obvious add here, but like no serious league as Jaylen Warren sitting there on the waiver wire. Najee Harris is banged up. There's a chance he misses time with this ankle injury, which would mean Jaylen Warren is pretty much a rock-solid RB2. Let's move over to what's a more exciting position this week, in my humble-ass opinion, on the waiver wire. MVS is atop the list with the most ads this week. He's still only 2% rostered. It's New Orleans. You have Shaheed out. You have Olave out. They got 2 lucky passes that broke the right way for MVS last week where he went over 100 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns on 3 catches. Atlanta just did not defend the deep ball very well. MVS is the clear fool's gold here. I will say, though, he'll run a lot of routes. Like, he'll probably be on the field for 90+% of routes. When Derek Carr takes shots down the field, it ain't going to beat anybody else but him. So there could be some ceiling games going forward, but you'll never be able to predict them. And I think more often than not, you're going to get 0, 1, 2, 3 points in your lineup far more often than you're going to get double-digit points out of MVS. So don't spend up based on the box score there. John Mechie, same thing, like had a pretty good game, but Nico should be back next week. And I'm pretty sure that was John Mechie's first good game in the NFL in 3 years. So no, we're not on that. Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, like they're not unowned in any serious leagues. I would rank them though, just for conversation's sake. Jennings for sure, and then Pearsall, but both of them definitely need to be owned. And if they are available, you're spending up for them. I'm just not going to talk about dudes that are 50+% owned. Odell, it's a big no. Adonai, I do want to talk about Adonai. I want to talk about just the Indianapolis receivers as a whole, because we had Michael Pittman. I don't know what to make of the Pittman situation. There are a lot of moving parts in Indy, because we have Pittman who was like injured his back, was supposed to go on the IR, then played, then caught a touchdown. Then he's like, no, I'm not okay, but I'm okay enough to play, but now I can't play anymore. He could end up on the IR at any given moment. He could end up playing next week versus the Jets. I don't know what they're doing out there in Indianapolis. I don't know what he's doing. If it's just like literally a day-to-day thing where tomorrow he can end up on the IR, tomorrow he could be a full participant in practice. If Michael Pittman is out, these other receivers become really interesting to me, because Josh Downs is the slot wide receiver there, and he takes a lot of over-the-middle targets here. But Adonai and Alec Pierce are running downfield routes, and they are running more routes than Josh Downs is. They are on the field for all the passing plays, 12 personnel, 11 personnel, and they're running much more valuable routes, obviously. Adonai Mitchell is an incredible separator. Alec Pierce gets downfield targets. He gets end zone targets. He's catching a lot of touchdowns this year. They're both usable in games that we project Joe Flacco to have to throw the ball a lot, which brings us to the next point there, where I don't know how long they could like run this charade out of Joe Flacco being the guy. My mindset right now on this, I think this is what I finalized my opinion to be in this situation. I think they made the conscious choice to sit Anthony Richardson to just give him a full reset. I think they were hoping that it meant Joe Flacco gave them a better chance to win. I can't imagine you watch the games right now and you still have that thought in your mind. The way that he played, like his decision making is horrific. The throws that he's making, literally straight to defenders. So he's not playing the quarterback position any better than Anthony Richardson was. I think what they want to do, though, is just give Anthony Richardson, a month or so to like reset his brain a little bit, and we will see him back on the field. They've already said Joe Flacco is the starter for this upcoming week. That's in New York against the Jets, who I know their defense has been terrible, but like any given week, I think they could put together a really strong pass defense. So I think this could be another week where Joe Flacco struggles. They have their bye in week 14. I think we see A-Rich before that. Would love to see him against Detroit. That would be phenomenal. I would love to see him against New England. It doesn't get pressure against the quarterback either. So maybe Flacco for one more week, and then they go back to A-Rich. If Joe Flacco's under center, though, obviously we like these receivers a lot more. I would actually prioritize Adonai Mitchell over Alec Pierce. I know that's probably counterintuitive, and maybe that's just my heart talking over my brain, but I loved A.D. Mitchell as a prospect. He is such a good route runner, and we finally saw it come together in a full game where he is just like making dudes miss, and he is catching every ball thrown his way and doing a lot of stuff that I saw on tape at Texas. Now, Alec Pierce, again, like he can't just be thrown to the side because the guy continues to produce week in and week out when he has stable quarterback play. So I think both of them are without a doubt worth adding if Michael Pittman is out, if Joe Flacco's under center. Obviously moving parts, which makes it risky and overall would make me throw my fab bid down a little bit. But I think both of them in that like 5 to 8% range, 5 to 10% range is valid. I actually picked A.D. Mitchell up in my league on Sunday morning before the game started because Michael Pittman was ruled out, and I feel good about owning him now because I only spent like 2 or 3% fab on him. But yeah, I don't have like a really strong lean one way or the other. Is probably the end case there, the conclusion of my yapping on the Colts receiver core. Continuing down, like there's just no one on the bottom of this list that makes me excited. In Buffalo, you're looking at Keon Coleman out again this week. Amari Cooper should be back. I don't really know. Dalton Kincaid likely to miss a week, most likely. I think he's on the bad side of 50-50. Could end up being a multi-week injury, which does open the door for more targets to go elsewhere. I think Shakir will probably continue to see a big boost. Matt Collins does get interesting, I guess. They're probably going to have to score points against Kansas City, which actually maybe not even a true narrative whatsoever. But if all those guys miss time, I think you could talk yourself into kind of liking Matt Collins, but I'm not really spending any fab on him. Let's move over to the tight end position. If we are talking about spending fab on a tight end, it would be Dawson Knox for me, simply because of the Dalton Kincaid PCL sprain. I think this does land him anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks in terms of missing. And like I said yesterday in the game-by-game recap video, Dawson Knox has, a long line of chemistry with Josh Allen already. He's put together solid seasons, solid games, and with all these players banged up, like the target share condenses to just a few guys on this team. They play Kansas City, where maybe it isn't a shootout, but it's really hard to run the ball. And Buffalo wants to run the ball. If Kansas City takes away the run game, they're going to have to throw the ball. And I think Dawson Knox, you could do a lot worse than Dawson Knox at the tight end position if you are streaming or if you're looking for a guy to fill in for the next couple of weeks. On that note, Jonnu Smith has been like a really fun player for the Dolphins, man. He's caught at least 3 passes in 5 straight games. He's not a big touchdown scorer because they're just not producing a lot of touchdowns really through the air. But he's sort of become the third option here, almost ahead of Waddle. He's like tied with Jalen Waddle right now. And, if you have a tight end that can give you anywhere from a floor of, 6 points up to 20 points or so, because he is a big play waiting to happen. He's fast. He's athletic. He is explosive. He's a good tight end streaming option if you're looking for like a top 15 guy to fill in for some of those bye week options. This week, again, you have guys like McBride on bye, so a lot of people will need to fill in. He has a great matchup against the Raiders as well. You have Zach Ertz, same shit, different week. Nothing I can tell you that you didn't already know about it. No one else gets me excited on this list, and everybody else is highly owned. Some streaming defenses. Yes, Houston. Houston was dropped by a lot of people because they were playing Detroit, ended up scooping 5 interceptions, so you probably should have played them. But now they play against Dallas, and Cooper Rush is obviously tragic out there for the Cowboys, so Houston would definitely be the number 1 stream. Detroit's going to be heavy favorites against Jacksonville if Trevor Lawrence is out. All the rumblings we heard last week made it seem like he was for sure out for, the foreseeable future, if not the entire season, but they're keeping it like super close to vest where like, oh, it's day-to-day, he has a chance to play. I don't know that I buy that whatsoever. So Detroit would be the next defense up for sure, but they are 63% owned already, so probably not super available for you. Green Bay, they're at Chicago. They're going to be heavy favorites in this game. I want to say it's like a 6-point favorite. They're coming off the bye, so I think a lot of them should be a lot healthier. Like Jacobs should be good to go. There will be some weather implications in this game is what I've read so far, which I do think lends itself to better defense for fantasy. Caleb Williams kind of scrambling around, bad throws, slipping, sacks, all that kind of stuff. They did just fire Shane Waldron. There was only up to go from there. A new play caller, a new system, a new scheme, whatever, obviously can't be implemented in 4 days, but it can't get worse than what Waldron did. So maybe we see a boost in energy, maybe we see a boost in mood, because again, that particular subject also can't get any worse. So the changes in Chicago, hopefully we see a little bit more uptick in like fantasy usage, but I'm not really banking on it. I'm not getting head over heels about it. I think Green Bay is a very good streaming option this week at Chicago in what should be some slippery weather. And then down here, 49, the last streaming option that I think is probably just as good as some of the other ones, the Rams at New England. They're 17% owned. The Rams defense, I don't think people were too privy to like what that defensive line has looked like and what that defense overall has looked like until last night. They obviously didn't beat the Dolphins, but you just saw Jared Verse. He is a monster there. Brandon Fisk, like they dominated the draft. They went in on the defensive side of the ball because they obviously lost Aaron Donald. They lost defensive pieces, and they filled that shit up real quick. And that has made them a really good defense. And I think with the amount of turnovers Drake May is producing, like this is a stream that I think is well worth putting on your radar. And let's run down the drop list real quick. Khalil Herbert, unfortunately, he had 1 carry, fumbled it. He is probably out of the pecking order there for the time being. They signed Gary Brightwell, who's not better than Khalil Herbert, but I don't know how they're going to divvy up those carries. I think Khalil Herbert will get another shot, maybe this week, maybe eventually, but it wasn't a good start for him. So droppable if you need the roster spot. Parker Washington, unfortunately, super let down with Mac Jones. Yeah, I think he's droppable. Mason Tipton, also droppable. Sterling Shepard, they're on a bye this week. Hopefully Mike Evans is back the week after that. I think he's droppable as well. Marcus Robinson, I think you could do worse as like a wide receiver 3. Like he obviously had a down game last night, but he's capable of putting up double touchdown games on any given week, which we saw the 2 previous weeks prior. So wouldn't drop him. Tank Bigsby dealing with an ankle injury, but I think he's been too good this year to straight up drop. Jordan Mason, I wouldn't drop either. San Fran, it's a little bit tricky to decipher C-Mac. Like, he obviously took pretty much all the snaps for that backfield. He took all the touches for that backfield. My one concern is, like, he clearly wasn't 100% yet. He's getting his legs underneath him. It's not that I think he's going to get injured, but it's just, scientific factualities that this is almost like in the preseason when players start to ramp up really fast, especially to like game speed, the likelihood of re-injuring something or pulling something becomes a lot higher. So I think over this next like 2 to 3 week period, we will have a very, very highly elevated injury risk for a dude like C-Mac, who's going from 0 to game speed, and not just like playing in game speed, but seeing 20 to 25 touches. There is a high likelihood of some sort of tweak for C-Mac. Maybe he comes off the next month unscathed, and this is a useless rant by me. But all is to say, I would not be dropping the San Francisco backfield outside of C-Mac, just because, again, if something happens to him, you have a nice RB2 again just sitting on your roster. Tolbert, yeah, unfortunately, everybody in the Dallas passing offense is droppable. Gesicki, I would definitely hold on to because we don't know if T. Higgins is going to play. Taysom Hill is super involved in that offense. Probably wouldn't drop him either. Odell was never rosterable, therefore you could drop him. Cole and Jonnu would hold on to. Deontay, I'm probably going to give it another week or two just to see what his snap counts do, because he's just simply too good of a player not to be playing more than 50 to 60% of the snaps. And, we still think of Baltimore as like this run-first offense. In yesterday's video, I told you, Lamar is on pace for 4,500 passing yards and over 40 passing touchdowns. Okay, so it's not like this is a 3,200-yard, 22 passing touchdown campaign where he's just been amazing and winning games and doing it with his legs. He's been doing it through the air as well. So definitely not dropping Deontay. Worthy, honestly, I'm super fine with you dropping him if you need the roster spot. Singletary, if you can't hold on to him through the bye, fine with that. Justice Hill, you can drop. Keon, unfortunately, if he's already ruled out for this upcoming week, it's probably a pretty serious injury. I would really prefer not to drop him. If you can throw him in the IR spot, that would be phenomenal. Keaton Mitchell, I don't think he needs to be owned in 10 or 12 team leagues, but yeah. Roshan, just a handcuff to DeAndre Swift. Hunter Henry, definitely not dropping. Palmer's droppable. Addison, nah, you're not dropping him. Rodriguez, nah, you could drop. Sean Tucker, you could drop. Javonte Williams, I want to see one more game just to make sure that we know Estime is the guy back here. Otherwise, I am holding on to him. Westbrook-Ikini is just who he is. Roma Dunze, droppable. Interesting. Let's see another game or two again with the offensive coaching changes before we do anything on the Chicago side of things. Dalvin Cook, definitely droppable. Hutchinson, definitely droppable. Noah Brown, I think he has the same outlook he did last week when everyone wanted to pick him up. He's still the wide receiver 2 in Washington. Last week was an incredibly difficult game against Pittsburgh, one of the top passing defenses in the NFL. Jaden finally struggled for the first time in what feels like 2 months, so don't put too much stock into Noah Brown not having a good game. They also do get a really tough matchup at Philly on Thursday Night Football, so wouldn't be surprised if he struggles again. But Brown's actually a dude that I'm like okay holding on to through these bye weeks if need be. Darius Slayton, yeah, it's fine to drop him if you need to. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap up Week 11 waiver wire. Drop some comments down below to let me know who I'm wrong about, and I'll see y'all when I see you tomorrow. Smoochies.